Why would they release a plugin for Claude Code?
Right at the top, it says default to skepticism. And here's the important part. There's no reverse. It means we've reached an era where a competitor.
Renka, I was checking out GitHub trending and found a weird repo.
A weird repo.
It's called OpenAI codex-plugin-cc, and it's already got 27k stars. But it says right there it's a plugin for Claude Code.
Ah, so you found that one.
OpenAI, the company behind Codex, right? Why would they release a plugin for Claude Code, their competitor?
Yeah, on the surface that setup doesn't make sense, and it picked up 65k stars on launch day alone.
That's a lot of attention for a single day.
So today, let's dig into why OpenAI put this out and take a look inside. Once you install the plugin, it adds a set of / commands. Broadly, there are two types: review commands and task delegation commands.
Review commands? That means getting your code looked at?
Right, /codex. Review lets Codex review it from a different angle. It's like having Codex check the code Claude wrote.
Makes sense even with 2AI. Different models catch different things.
There's also /codex, adversarial review. That's an adversarial review. It genuinely goes after design gaps.
Adversarial? How tough are we talking?
The prompt literally says, don't credit good intentions. That's how far it goes.
No mercy there. Sounds great for a final check before shipping.
Next up, task delegation /codex. Rescue lets you hand a task straight off to Codex.
Handoff, like, you can delegate investigation or code fixes too.
Yeah, you can just say something like, find out why the tests are failing, in plain language, and it supports background execution, so once you hand it off, you can get back to your own work.
Zero waiting while you keep working on something else. Sharina likes that.
Then when it's done, you check with /codex, status, and pull the result with /codex, result.
So you can run Claude and Codex side by side in parallel. You mentioned the adversarial review earlier. What's actually inside the prompt?
There's a file called adversarial review MD, and it's a pretty good read. Right at the top, it says default to skepticism, meaning make doubt your starting point.
So the stance is to question everything from the start.
And it goes on to say don't credit partial fixes or anything treated, as we'll handle it later. It also says if something only works on the happy path, treat that as a weakness.
So passing the normal case alone doesn't cut it. That's harsh.
The attack surfaces are properly listed out too. Auth, data loss, rollback, race conditions, handling empty states, that kind of thing.
So it checks off one by one every gap that could lead to an incident.
On the flip side, there are things it's told not to flag. Style or naming convention nitpicks, those just count as noise, so skip them.
Sharina likes that it's built to only surface the truly serious problems.
The output also follows a JSON schema, with file name, line range, and confidence attached. So instead of some vague impression, you get a structured breakdown of exactly where the problem is.
Being able to use it directly as a fix list makes life easier on the receiving end too. Does the rescue command have any options?
There's a model flag that lets you switch models. The plugin's designed around the GPT-5.4 line, but if you specify Spark, you get a different model.
Spark? Never heard of that model name.
It's an alias for GPT-5.3 codex Spark, a lightweight model. It's faster than the full model, and cheaper too.
So you're supposed to pick depending on the task.
Right, heavy investigation goes to the full model, and light fixes run on Spark. Having a fast, cheap path built in by default is quietly thoughtful.
Running the full model for every little fix would be overkill anyway.
There's another interesting feature, a command called /codex, transfer.
Transfer what?
It moves the whole conversation context you've built up in Claude Code over to Codex.
So you're basically relocating the entire conversation.
Right? And running the command gives you back something like codex resume session ID. Run that in the codex CLI, and you can just pick up right where you left off.
So the flow is, nail down the design direction in Claude, then hand implementation off to Codex.
Yeah, that's exactly the workflow it's designed for. Since the discussion history carries over, you don't have to explain everything from scratch on the Codex side.
Being able to share context like that is quietly really helpful, you know.
That adversarial review from before. There's more to it than just calling it manually. Turn on a feature called the review gate, and it starts kicking in automatically.
Automatically? At what point does it trigger?
Right before Claude sends back its response. After making a code change, Codex's adversarial review runs right there. And if there's a problem, it gets blocked.
So a double check just kicks in on its own. Sounds useful, but
Thing is, this is a feature the README itself puts a warning on.
it's kind of rare for the official docs to go out of their way to flag something, right?
When it gets blocked, Claude fixes it, gets reviewed again, and that just repeats. Worst case, Claude and Codex loop on each other endlessly and burn through your usage limit.
So both API's usage just drains away all at once.
That's why it's off by default. It's meant to be enabled only when you can actually watch it.
We've gone through a bunch of commands now, but what does the plugin itself actually do?
Here's the thing, this plugin never calls an LLM on its own.
It doesn't? Then who's actually talking to Codex?
It just invokes the Codex CLI that's already installed locally. The plugin is basically a thin wrapper that hooks into that CLI ST'd in and ST'd out.
So the plugin itself has no AI functionality at all.
Right? And the README spells that out too. It says it uses the same codex install, the same authenticated session.
So billing and everything else still happens straight through the Codex side account.
Same with config, ~codex/config. TOML still applies exactly as is. The plugin doesn't introduce a new auth flow or a new billing path of its own.
So this plugin is basically just borrowing Claude Code's UX, Sharina figures.
Pretty much, /commands, background execution, all that. It's running Codex on top of the interaction layer Claude Code already built.
So the plugin just calls the Codex CLI, got it, but something still bugs me. Why would OpenAI go out of its way to build this for a rival platform?
That's the most interesting part of this whole plugin. Like I said, the plugin has no billing path of its own, which means every review, every rescue, all of it bills through Codex.
So you get the experience through Claude Code, but the money lands on Codex's side.
And they timed it right when Claude Code opened up its plugin marketplace. The moment third parties could write plugins, OpenAI was first out the gate with this.
That's fast, feels like they've been waiting for it.
I don't think it's an accident they picked review as the entry point, either. With a review, the quality of the result is obvious at a glance.
True, if it catches something genuinely useful, you walk away thinking Codex is pretty good.
And here's the important part, there's no reverse direction.
Reverse direction?
There's no plugin right now that lets Codex call Claude.
So it's one way, OpenAI the only one setting foot in the other's yard, Sharina notes. So how hard is it to actually set up this plugin?
It's done in 4 steps. First, you do this inside Claude Code. Run /plugin marketplace, add OpenAI/codex-plugin-cc. Then install it with /plugin install codex at OpenAI codex. And once you reload plugins with /reload plugins, the commands become available.
That's 3 steps so far. What's left?
Then there's /codex, setup. It checks the state of your codex CLI.
What happens if you don't have Codex CLI installed?
It suggests running npm install g at OpenAI/codex, so you just run that.
That's nice, walking you through the steps like that.
Also, if you were already using Codex locally, your auth and settings carry over as is.
Nice, so you don't have to log in again from scratch. Okay, I get the commands, but how should you actually split the work between them?
If you look at how the plugin's designed, a natural division shows up. The basic idea is you keep Claude Code as your main driver. Conversation, planning, small edits. You just keep doing those in Claude.
So it's not like you hand everything over to Codex.
Reviews are where Codex shines. Send it over when you want a different perspective from Claude. Same code, different model. the points it flags end up different.
So it's kind of like getting a second opinion.
For heavy investigation or regression debugging, the trick is to run it in background so it doesn't block your work. While Codex is running, you can keep working on something else in Claude.
So the heavier the task, the more it makes sense to run in the background.
Adversarial review is best used just once, right before shipping.
You mean if you run it repeatedly during development, it just stalls things out?
That prompt seriously throws out blocks, so it's better suited for a final check.
When you stop and think about it, it's pretty wild that OpenAI is shipping a plugin for Claude Code.
It means we've reached an era where a competitor officially shows up on the other platform. And on top of that, all the billing goes to Codex's side, so it holds up as an actual business.
The experience is Claude Code, but the money goes to OpenAI. That's a pretty clever setup.
If you're trying it for the first time, I'd recommend /codex. Review background. It has Codex review code that Claude wrote. Just that alone lets you feel the difference in what each model points out.
So it's less about which one's better, more about making use of the difference in perspective.
We're moving from an era of picking one tool to an era of switching between multiple perspectives.
I wonder if a plugin in the opposite direction will show up, one that calls Claude from Codex.
That's the next thing to watch for. Whether Anthropic makes a move. Right now it's one way, but it'll get interesting once it becomes two-way.
Looks like AI coding tools are only going to keep connecting more and more.
Competition and collaboration moving forward at the same time. It's turning into an interesting era.